Welcome to our second episode of Proof of Concept. This is the podcast tech show where we explore real live use cases from the field and discuss some of the hottest questions and the hottest technology in data science and AI. I'm your host, Grant Case, and as always is my partner in crime here, Alex Hubert from
Hey Grant,
Singapore is with me. Hey, Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
Uh, could be better here in Sydney. We're trying to stay out of the lockdown.
Okay. Okay, well hopefully it's
So
gonna be end up soon.
yeah, so Alex, today's discussion is all about this thing called Feature Store.
Very
We're
interesting
hearing a lot about
conversation.
it. There's a lot of technology techinistas talking about what a feature store is. You can't walk into a virtual conference at this point in time and not have somebody talking about it. So, the first question we always ask here on Proof of Concept is cool stuff with this technology. Before we even discuss what it is, what can you do with a feature store?
Yeah, I mean, once again, if we're putting ourselves in the shoes of end user customer, what are the services that you use on a day-to-day basis that requires a lot of predictive analytics and a very specific type of predictive analytics, anything that is live. And we will expand on that in a second. The difficulty in making live prediction is the context around you can change pretty quickly, really rapidly, and therefore that makes the quality of the prediction a little bit harder to keep as high as possible. Because once again, the weather can be changing, your position on the map can be changing, a lot of different parameters can be changing. And ultimately, the feature store is helping a lot of organizations to do a lot of predictive analytics live on the fly, and once again at scale. A very good example of that is Uber, who actually was probably the first one to describe extensively how they use feature stores in their engineering team. And they explain how they use a system called Michelangelo, essentially, to do a lot of live prediction of Uber Eats and where they should expect spikes in demands, spike for some specific type of meals or restaurant, ultimately to serve their customer better.
Mhm. And I think for me, kind of the interesting thing about feature stores is really how can I enable a set of data scientists to iterate very, very quickly? Uh, had a wonderful example reading up by one of our Data IQ clients that, in effect, implemented a feature store so that they could start rapidly trying out different models with different engineering inputs. That whole concept of the feature store, being able to take different components, try them very, very quickly, deploy models, like you said, for that real time processing, and then ultimately do A/B testing, blue,
Yeah.
green, whatever, canary, to try to understand like what's the value here, and then be able to move on. So if I look at kind of that feature store, that cool stuff, like the fact that we all, at least here in Australia, Uber's everywhere, and that I Uber everywhere, you know, it's the proof is in what they've been able to bring to us, and a lot of that has to do with their ability as an organization to quickly predict what's going on, where demand is happening. And I can't think of a better way of introducing a set of technologies than to say, hey, you know that thing you use in your phone every day? That's what's doing it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So So we've talked a little bit about what cool stuff we can do with feature stores, but always we've got to be able to explain it. So we like to talk about Eli 5, my CEO. So explain it like it's 5 to my CEO, Alex. Yeah, I'm going to walk in, I'm going to talk to my CEO. What is a feature store and why should he give me or her give us money to do it?
Yeah, indeed. It's very important to be able to put it into a context that's digestible for as many people as possible, right? And feature store, it can be a very intimidating word and concepts. I also started that example by talking about making live predictions. But in practice, a lot of organizations are not even using it for live prediction, because in practice, a feature store is a very old concept. It's something as simple as making sure that you can compute features for machine learning purposes, obviously, automatically, so that your data scientists are not going to retrain those features, spend too much time to develop those features, maintain them, because you write the logic once, and then the feature store is going to be there to recompute all those features automatically, ultimately when you have a new set of data, so that your data scientists are building models with the freshest set of features, let's say. So nothing really rocket science.
Mhm.
It's a scheduler on top of a database, on top of logic codes, codes and logic to compute features, essentially, for machine learning purposes.
So I was talking to Brian King. He was an individual I work with at Servian here in Australia. He made a great analogy. So think of your team of data scientists, and you were looking for a specific apple, and you were looking at this huge jungle, or it's banana, or some sort of fruit, and way out there, and on the second mountaintop, there is fruits I can pick. That's a feature. What would be easier, going into the jungle to find that one specific piece of fruit that might be the freshest fruit you can find, but I could just as easily go into a grocery store and I have all of the apples, I have all of the oranges, I have all the different banana varieties and types, and I can pick what I need, and if I don't like it, I can put it back.
Yeah.
That to me is the benefit and the power of the feature store. For the data scientist, for the machine learning engineer, they can pick what they need, and then they're not having to try to truck out and find what they need.
Yeah, clearly, it's once again, the value of it is, you just standardize the way you are going to serve features through your analytics team. Again, we make a huge focus on the data science people, but it can also be useful for people that are, you know, gearing more towards even a bit of descriptive analytics, right? A huge
Mhm.
problem for people that were doing descriptive analytics is that they have to do data prep, right? So they have to have
Mhm.
some data set that are potentially not clean at all, potentially not enriched. You can definitely handle all that enrichment, that cleaning process through a feature store, so that these people can focus in finding the right outcome for the business, answering the right business questions through dashboardings, and once again making sure that people can act on those insights. And if you're a data scientist, yeah, like great, of course you want to build models, but we all know that your models have to be fed with the right features. They have to be built rigorously, following some strong statistical and scientific processes. What if you make a mistake? If you make a mistake, all of a sudden your model is going to be impacted. All of a sudden, the business is ultimately down the line going to be impacted. That's the value that the feature store is bringing on the table. I mean, one part of the value that the feature store
Yeah.
is bringing on the table.
Yeah. And if you have some insights or like some comments about feature stores, join us on LinkedIn or YouTube and follow us there. And we'd love to hear your comments around this, because obviously we're not always the experts, but we hopefully can get some more information from you as an audience. So you mentioned something there, and it's time to dovetail into our next topic and segment, and that's really around compare and contrast. So uh, you started to do it a little bit earlier there, Alex, but kind of compare and contrast, this technology of a feature store. What is it? What do we compare it to? What is it? What are we thinking about it?
It's actually pretty hard to compare this one to something, because it's technically speaking a relatively new concept. Now, if you put yourself in the grand scheme of things, once again, it's not new at all. You can compare it to the good old scheduler that you could have been using a while back. So, technically speaking, a cron tab managing the right Python jobs, the right SQL routines on your database can be assimilated to a feature store. Now, the feature store is helping by bringing a lot of extra feature on top of that, especially from a machine learning purposes. What is really important is to be able to replicate your experiment. So you want to version control the data that you have used, for instance. That's the value that the feature store is going to add in comparison to a simple scheduler that is just running jobs and routines automatically when an event is triggering it. Once again, from a regulatory perspective, a governance perspective, you have to know which data you have used, which features you have built, and the ability to version those features is extremely important to replicate those experiments over time and making sure that, hey, I've just received that request from the regulator or from that specific customer to explain to me why I was denied that loan, for instance. I can replay the experiment, I can retrain the model, I can um, consistently arrive to the same results, and that's of a huge value for organization in a world where we add so much from we ask sorry so much from machine learning and predictive applications.
Yeah. So if I think about kind of comparing and contrasting over my career, I'll take you way back to 2002, 2003. Uh, I was working for a company called Royal Bank of Canada Builder Finance, and each month we had to build a report, and it was called Line Detail Report. And Line Detail basically, at any point in time, would tell us everything about the portfolio on a loan by loan basis.
Yeah.
And we could run it for every month. So, and internally within the month, sometimes we would take snapshots. So, that concept of that denormalized table that told us everything about a particular property at any point in time, I look as kind of the analog or the forerunner of a lot of what we talk about when we're talking about feature stores. It's that ability uh, to point at any point in time understand exactly what was happening uh, with an entity. That
Yep.
entity could be your customer, it could be an asset, it could be some sort of property, like in the case of us, or a loan. But that being able to pinpoint that amount in time and all of those different aspects of that entity is what lended its power.
Yep.
So I don't look at it as necessarily anything new. I
No,
look at
it's
it
not.
as it's not. So we're taking the different components and we're putting them together into something that is new. So it's the catalog, it's the scheduling,
Yeah.
it's the periodicity, etc. So that we get something, and hey, all be for us, it means I can call a car right now from Uber to get Uber here in 5 minutes and take me into the city.
Yep. And actually, for me, the real value is really the feature stories is that sort of glue or orchestration between all those concepts that we have used specifically in some specific areas of the analytics journey, making sure that now everything is well packaged into one entity where you can quickly go in, go out, find what you're looking for, and then build that predictive model or that piece of analytics that is going to bring value for the organization.
Yeah. So it's that time of the podcast again. How do we make money? How do we save money? Or how do we improve the customer experience, Alex, when it comes to feature store? So if we have to go justify, hey, I want a feature store. Yes, you've told me what it is, but what is it going to do for us? So what is a feature store? I think kind of the easy layup is it helps me kind of build models, but what's beyond that? How can I save money? How can I make money? How can I
Yeah.
improve the customer experience with a feature
I,
store?
yeah. So first of all, I don't want to tone down the importance of how easier it could be for you to build models. Once again, I'm not trying to say that the feature store should be the de facto for everything. You have to look into your business, understand exactly what you're doing, because to go back to your example about the jungle, if anyway there is no store at proximity, well, maybe your only solution is hunting. And if you're a startup, for instance, maybe looking into a feature store is way too early and that's not something very useful for you. But if you're a big organization, well, you have to manage teams of tens, potentially hundreds of data scientists. You have to make sure that they consistently use the right tool, the right set of data, the right set of information, and in the right way, so that anything that you put out there is going to be of value for the organization. That governance piece that can take a lot of time for you, making sure that they're doing the right thing, but also for these people when they join the team, having to learn about the data, how to compute some specific features. Essentially, the feature store help the data scientist himself to be more productive. Once again, in a very specific type of organization, so much more productive. But it also remove a lot of the burden of having to check how things were done, and ultimately you can put something out there valid that has been validated much quicker. So the real added value for the organization is I can trust what I have built, and I can put it out there much faster to enjoy the ROI that I'm going to get out of it. That's one way of looking at it. I'm sure you have a different perspective on it.
No, I completely agree when it comes to that. It's that productivity gain. I look at it also as how can, let's talk a little bit about how do we keep some of our employees happy? And, some of the
Yeah.
most expensive employees out there are the data scientists. And if we've learned anything, uh, it's not fun to do a lot of, you know, data engineering work. I look at the feature store is being able to give these data scientists the ability to do what they love, which is try to, you know, run experiments. It's not trying to necessarily, drill out the data out of your systems, but how can I start to, experiment on the data that's already prepared for me? And that's going to keep people around longer inside of the organization. And also, it basically will help with the institutional knowledge because if I've developed these sorts of items, then guess what? If Alex moves on, I always say, you don't get hit by a bus, you win the lottery, and Alex leaves tomorrow. At least I know what Alex was working on and how he was putting it together, in the feature store is what
Yeah.
is part of that glue.
And ultimately, and it's very interesting what you're saying here. Ultimately, the feature store is going to be much more useful for data ops team, data engineering team that are going to use that to serve a population of data scientists, data analysts. It's really a tool at you should consider that tool really if first and foremost you feel like your data engineering team or your data ops team receive a lot of requests, have a lot of struggle to just simply serve the data the right way to the rest of the analytics organization.
All right. I couldn't set it better myself. So we're at the final segment of our proof of concept podcast. Hopefully you're getting a little bit more. And so how do you save money, make money, or improve the customer experience with a feature store? Let us know. Follow us on LinkedIn or follow us on YouTube. Love to see your comments from the audience and bring it here into the podcast. So our final segment here, predictions. Alex, what are we going to be talking about? What's the future hold for feature stores?
This one is a tough one. I remember we talked about Kubernetes a while back. I'm pretty positive that Kubernetes is going to be around for a long time. A feature store should be around for a long time, but is it going to be called a feature store? I don't know, because once again, it used to be called a cron job. I mean, it's a bit controversial to say that a cron job was a feature store, but the core ideas of automating a set of logic that is going to build more refined features for your analytics team is a core idea, a central idea of building AI at scale within the enterprise. Right now, it belongs to something called the feature store. But what if we come with a better framework in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? And I wouldn't be surprised that we come with a better framework, and all of a sudden the feature store is outdated. What really matters to me in that prediction is for sure in 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years, you will still have that problem of I receive a lot of data, I need to process them, and I need to bring those refined process data as quickly as possible to my data scientist, my machine learning engineer, so that they can derive some value from those data. Right now, the feature store is going to help accelerate that. Is this going to be the case in 5 years? I don't know.
Yeah. Um, I I tend to agree. I'm probably a little bit more bullish than I was, even if you had talked to me about a year ago. And a lot of that has to do with some of the conversations I've had with organizations who have implemented the feature store concept. And I call it more of a concept because I don't think it's a tool. I know Amazon has AWS SageMaker Feature Studio. Uh, uh, Databricks has been talking about it. Logical Clocks, Tecton, which you were talking earlier, the folks that developed Michelangelo at Uber spun out into Tecton, Google Feast, etc. I kind of agree in that the concept is going to keep with us for quite some time. I think my question becomes, how does that concept morph? Do I think you're going to buy a feature store, right? No. I think the concept of a feature store and maybe even the retention of that name will start being consumed into different technologies. So, for
Yeah.
example, I could effectively build a feature store in Snowflake, or I could build a feature store in Synapse, or I could build a feature store in ADLS buckets using Azure Blob Storage. I don't think the feature store itself as a product is probably long for this world. I don't think we'll be all saying, well, I should go buy a feature store. I think it's just going to be another part of an offering from a much larger from a much larger platform or tooling perspective. It's going to be, hey, this is the feature store portion of my AI ML platform, or this is the feature store component that's directly attributable to my cloud analytic database. So, in
Yeah.
that sense, I think it's going to stick around. In fact, if you think about it, the forerunning of this has been probably, as you said earlier, it's cron jobs back to the 1980s, right? So we were generating green screens on Unix, generating reports on dot matrix printers. But ultimately, I think it's something that's going to stick and it's proving valuable. The question is, will we know it as a feature store? I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure it'll be as a tool or a platform or a product you buy. I'm not sure if it'll be there or not.
Yeah, and your point around it being part of a broader offering, especially from cloud vendors. Yeah, if I had to put some money somewhere, it would probably be there, or either the cloud vendors or probably Snowflake. Well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. That's the great thing about predictions. You get them all for free here on the Proof of Concept podcast or your money back. So, I want to thank you, Alex, for
Thanks,
joining
man.
us from Singapore. And thank you for listening to us here on the Proof of Concept podcast. Please stay tuned for upcoming episodes. Follow us on Data IQ link and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would love to hear from you, our audience. So thank you so much. Thanks, Alex from Singapore. I'm Grant Case here in Sydney. Thanks. See you
Thanks,
soon
guys.
and have a
Speak to you
great
soon.
day.
Bye.